Last Thursday when President Trump made these provocative statements regarding the NFL and the NFL protests, it really sparked something. We saw what's happened over the past week, and it'll be interesting to see what happens this Sunday and in the coming weeks. I think it's opened up a very intriguing and important topic, something that Colin Kaepernick brought to light last year, back in August, before the 2016 season. And even though he's not in the league this year, that's carried forward into the way players have responded both before Trump's statement and obviously in droves, the entire league-wide response that happened this past Sunday. I think it will continue. It's interesting that Trump has taken issue with how these celebrities are using their social currency to exert influence. I think he knows deep down the way he did as a celebrity, as a successful businessman, did the same thing and leveraged his currency to make his statements, to make known what his political opinions were, and then actually leverage that to get into office. He knows what kind of power there is in that, and the power of marketing and media and how to use it. So when a group of the most powerful sports business and franchises in the world goes not just in our own country, but to another country, to another continent like Europe, and puts up this signal of protest, this sign of dissent and dissension, it's something that can be quite alarming, to someone who's actually in charge of this organization or this country, where you want to be able to report to the rest of the world that people approve of the way we're doing things and that we have kind of an internal unity, which in essence and in actuality we clearly don't. And so I think that really gets more and more highlighted by this type of high profile level of dissension, and people being bold enough and brave enough to bring that to the forefront. So I think it's a constructive and important conversation. It's obviously highly charged. How it gets resolved and what the future holds, you heard Connor and I discussing some ideas for what a good picture would look like going forward. I think in addition to the way players are accepted or embraced for and fans for their expression of dissent or protesting, I think equally as important is how those issues then that get brought back into the communities, back into legislation, back into the way we look at the relationships between, let's say, law enforcement and different members of various communities, what some of the problems have been, really coming to the table there, arm in arm, in a unified way. And for players to do more than just protesting on the field, but show it through your social currency and your actions when the game is over in the off season. What are you doing with your nonprofits and your charities? Are you going back to the inner cities of Chicago where there's gang violence as an athlete and talking to people, talking to gang members and different members of the community, going on a tour with the local police, as I know some NFL players have, to see what life is like through their lens, where they're going through, let's say, potentially dangerous neighborhoods and trying to make sure they're protecting other members of the neighborhood, protecting themselves, protecting each other, doing their job as law enforcement, which is not an easy job. It's something we need to respect and understand, and not just come to this polar position that all police are abrasive or rough or discriminatory and prejudiced, which is not true. And so when we take that stance and that position, in my eyes, that's just as wrong as taking a blind eye position and saying that, that the police are totally innocent. It is case by case. We have to come together and be as objective as possible and help each other understand the way players and owners of the NFL got together this week to help each other gain perspective, just like a different camera angle on the issues, and be compassionate and empathetic towards the other side. So that's part of where I hope and believe this can go, but it requires people, and the leaders especially, people like Kaepernick, like Rodgers, like the owners of teams. I was very proud to see some of the owners kneeling with the players. I know they didn't all agree with the protests last year and even this year, which is the reason why a talented player like Kaepernick hasn't been signed. But I think there was a turning of the tide this week with what happened, and I believe that's a positive example for what's possible going forward. As it relates to business opportunity and innovation and some of the things we focus on here on the Polymath project, I'll quickly highlight that a political, social, activist type tool like the Advocator, which will be launching in October within the next 30 days. You can see some screenshots here. It will allow people, much like Kickstarter, to crowdfund for money, but instead of money around great ideas to launch new products, it's money around social causes and issues, exactly like the ones we're talking about here. So regardless of what side you might sit on a particular issue, you could utilize this platform to kind of galvanize and rally folks that agree and support that same position. And then through those crowdfunded dollars, you would be able to hire lobbyists and form political action committees that, as we know, can do a variety of things, from advertising to influence on legislators to kind of change those laws that we feel may be unjust. And there certainly are a lot of opinions about that nowadays. And it's kind of a feeling of disenfranchisement that if our candidate didn't win, we've now got 2 years of 4 years of kind of being and feeling powerless. That's not necessarily the case. There's tons of laws and things that are being voted on and proposed all the time. So, I see tools and companies like the Advocator as possible solutions and possible integration points with the kind of issues we're talking about today. In fact, a Trump-supporting PAC recently launched a series of anti-NFL ads. So that's an example of something I don't necessarily agree with personally, but something that obviously in this free country groups can do if they truly believe a certain position. They can take that position in a legal way. So we encourage that. The Advocator will encourage it, and it's something that once we launch will be interesting to see how it coincides with this kind of social issues we're seeing with the NFL right now. So we'll come back next week. We'll probably touch on this topic continually going forward, but this was a really intriguing discussion. Thanks for joining us today. Have a great day and a great weekend, and we'll see you all next week.